So, welcome to lesson 2 of your Chemistry of the Atmosphere unit of work. This lesson is on greenhouse gases. So, if you've got a digital copy of your booklet or a paper copy of your booklet, make sure to turn to page 11, or if you're just using pen and paper, obviously you can make your own notes as we go through this tutorial. So, to begin with, on page 11 and 12, if you'd like to have a look at the knowledge check questions that are on the screen right now, I'm going to pause the video. If you'd then like to review your work from lesson 1, see if you can answer them. And once you've done that, I'll unpause the video and we can go through and you can mark correct, green pen your answers as required. So I'm going to pause the video now and give you a chance to do that. Right, so hopefully you've unpaused the video. So if we go through the answers nice and quickly, gas produced by algae, you'll find to be oxygen. Name a gas that is produced by volcanoes. You could be putting carbon dioxide or sulfur dioxide. Write the chemical formula for calcium carbonate. That is CaCO3. Coal is a sedimentary rock formed from thick plant deposits. Take the percentage of nitrogen in the atmosphere today, it's around 79 to 80%. Oxygen, it's around 20 to 21%. Carbon dioxide, it's about 0.037%. And then the process where plants make glucose, that obviously, if you've got plants that are making glucose, is photosynthesis. So, if we just go through the text below to begin with, if we just read through it and add in a little bit of extra detail. So make the annotations that are in the video and obviously pause where required, make any notes or do any of the tasks as instructed. So as it says, the role of greenhouse gases. So greenhouse gases in the atmosphere maintain temperature on Earth high enough to support life. They allow short wavelength radiation to pass through the atmosphere to the Earth's surface, but absorb the outgoing long wavelength radiation from the Earth, causing an increase in temperature. So make sure you get that relationship, that greenhouse gases cause an increase in temperature. Water vapour, carbon dioxide and methane are all greenhouse gases. So bear in mind that short wavelength radiation is energy that's emitted from the sun, or also any energy that comes from electrons or flying subatomic particles that are in outer space. So that's what we mean by short wavelength radiation. And then it absorbs outgoing long wavelength radiation. So examples of these from the electromagnetic spectrum: gamma, X-rays, ultraviolet and infrared. Now, where does it absorb these? It absorbs these types of radiation in the bonds of gas molecules. So for example, the double covalent bonds of carbon dioxide molecules absorb energy that reflects off the Earth's surface, and it's that causes this increase in temperature that we all associate with greenhouse gases and global warming, as we'll go on to. Now, 3 common examples that you need to know of greenhouse gases: water vapour, carbon dioxide and methane. They are ones to learn. Right, first task that I'd like to do now. You'll see in the description below there is the first video, video 1. I'd like you to pause this video now and go and catch up and link to this hyperlink here, which is video 1. And I'd like to watch it and just simply make some notes on your notes page or just in your own revision notebook of what are the known effects of global warming and climate change. So video 1, if you pause the video now and do that, then we'll come back to that in a minute. Right, hopefully you've gone through video 1 and you've made some notes on the known effects of climate change. So if we have a little look at some of the human effects in the atmosphere. Some activities increase the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So these are human activities. So we increase the amount of carbon dioxide through the combustion of fossil fuels and deforestation. Now remember, the combustion of fossil fuels is burning in oxygen. Now, fossil fuels contain lots of locked-in carbon. And here we're talking about natural gas, coal and oil. You burn these, you release the carbon, and what that does is it bonds with oxygen in the air, forming carbon dioxide, which you should know is CO2. Right, deforestation. Deforestation, cutting down trees. Why is that going to increase carbon dioxide? Now, the reason why that's going to increase carbon dioxide is because if you've got less trees, means less photosynthesis. And if you've got less photosynthesis, you have got less oxygen being produced and carbon dioxide being absorbed from the atmosphere. Also produces methane. Now, more animal farming and decomposition of rubbish in landfill sites. Now, especially animal farming, we're talking about cows and cow farts. Cows release methane gas when they excrete gas, when they basically take a little fart, and that methane goes into the atmosphere. More cows, more animals that you're farming for things like beef gives you more methane. Right. The increase in the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over the last 100 years correlates with increased use of fossil fuels. And this is by humans. So as we have become more industrialised and used fossil fuels more, we've produced more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that's had an impact on the atmosphere. So, what I'd like you to do now, again, is I'd like you to pause the video and go and have a look at video 2 in the description below. And I'd like to watch that video. And again, I'd like to make some simple revision notes on what are some of the cause and effects of climate change. Can you do that now? Pause the video, go and have a look at video 2 and have a look at some of the cause and effects of climate change. Good. So hopefully you've got a full set of notes, annotations and highlights like that. I'd like to have a little look now at applying some of these ideas. So as you'll see, the question says, explain how greenhouse gases maintain the temperature of the Earth. So, explain, when we're talking about an exam question, is asking you to describe what is happening, what happens, and why. Okay? So what happens to greenhouse gases and why to maintain the temperature of the Earth? So can you pause the video now, go back through your notes, have a little look at any online revision that you want to do, online research you want to do, see if you can answer this question. Then we'll pause the video and then we can green pen it together and you can make a note of a model answer and some of the key points that will be looked for. So pause the video now and do that for me. Right, explain how greenhouse gases maintain the temperature of the Earth. So, the first thing to bear in mind that you get a mark for here is that shorter wave radiation is emitted from the sun and it passes through the atmosphere. Now, the Earth, it emits this as a long wave radiation. Now, this long wave radiation gets trapped by greenhouse gases. And the trapped energy or radiation then warms or heats the Earth. Good. Right. If you move on a little bit, so hopefully you've made some notes on that and how to go. What I'd then like you to have a little look at is the following. Now this is just looking at data. So if we go through this together, we don't need as many notes on this. We just need to have a look at it and discuss it. Right. So the following graph was obtained from data derived from bubbles formed in ice. In cold climates, parts of the atmosphere are trapped in small bubbles when the sea forms. When this freezes, the atmosphere at the time is locked. By drilling cores from the ice, we can analyse contents of trapped gas and construct a timeline of the atmosphere. The deeper the sample, the older the atmosphere. So this tells us how it's changed over time. Now let's have a look. Next page. The data source. So the data originates from the American Chemical Society, which existed for 140 years. The mission is to advance the broader chemistry enterprise and its practitioners for the benefit of Earth and its people. They provide real data from peer-reviewed questions. So, questions. Describe the trend in 3 greenhouse gases from the year 0 to 1750. 1750 is about here. So what's the trend in the level of greenhouse gases here of carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide? So the trend is the pattern. So pattern is they remain at roughly constant levels. And then describe the trend after that. What do? Increase, and if they increase incredibly rapidly, they almost increase exponentially. So there's an exponential rate of increase in all 3 gases. Now, suggest why that happened. The reason why it happened is because there was an increased development of industry by humans, and we often refer to this process, this stage in history, as the Industrial Revolution. Now, thinking about data to do with climate change, let's have a little look at the next paragraph as well. Based on peer-reviewed evidence, many scientists believe that human activities will cause the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere to increase at the surface, and that this will result in global climate change. Peer review involves the author's work being sent to other professionals in the field so they can agree on the evidence, analysis, conclusions from the work and authorise its publication. Some sources of data and information are not peer-reviewed, so they lack the support of the scientific community in their authenticity. It's important to investigate where sources of information come from, especially online, as it's very easy for anyone to construct a site and publish false information, especially if they already have a biased agenda. Now, the main thing here is if you ever come across this word, peer review, the reason why it's important is it helps to confirm the accuracy of scientific results. And what that basically means is it means that someone's work is sent to other professionals in the same field so that they can agree on the work. As in, is it correct? Do they come to the same conclusions? So it validates it. So are these valid ideas? So that's the idea of peer reviewing. Now, modelling climate change. However, it's difficult to model such complex systems as global climate change. Climate models are estimates based on data from interactions between the atmosphere, land and oceans. It's difficult to see if a model will predict trends of the future, so instead they use them to predict the past. If the model matches actual events in history, then it will be used to reasonably predict trends of the future. In climate change, a computer model based on equations and algorithms could predict a change in ocean temperature over 20 years. To check the model works, we'd use it to predict the previous 20 years and match it to actual ocean changes. Now, why do we use computer modelling? Computer modelling gives you an idea to simulate what might happen in a future event based on different factors. So when we're talking about climate change modelling, we're talking about how human actions will affect climate conditions. That's what computer modelling is for. So make sure you've made some notes from that page. Pause the video where you need to. And then if we just go on to our final section. So let's have a little read through this page. Now, instead of me just reading it out to you, I want you to pause the video here and just simply spend a couple of minutes reading through the text, looking at the graph, reading through the text at the bottom, and we're going to go on and have a look at a couple of final questions about it. So pause the video now and just have a little read of the text there itself. Right, if you've done that, let's have a look at two questions on the end. Describe the trend in temperature anomaly from 1880 to 2010. So what happens between then and probably about then? Now, our general trend is that initially temperature decreases between 1880 and around 1910. And then the second point is that after that, it's continually increasing. Now let's have a look at the final bit. So what happens to the rate from here compared to here? So on that final bit is we're saying that the rate actually is much quicker. The rate of increase is much quicker over this time period. So, then how do scientists use this data? So the complexity of trying to predict climate change based on previous climate data results in large data sets and complicated calculations. In order for the general public to understand the data, simplified models, speculation, and opinions presented in the media, they may be based on only parts of evidence which may be biased. Now, I'm going to be coming on to climate change in the next couple of lessons, but it's bearing in mind people's opinions of climate change and what they're based on. So, climate change is a change in climate. Simple as that. And it's caused by a variety of different things. Oh, come back. Sorry about that. Just jump back to our previous lesson, wherever we were. There we go. And it's caused by a variety of different things, as I said. Let's just get this all up and running. There we go. Such as, for example, methane can be increased in the atmosphere by landfill, farming, animal waste, etc. But because it can be, people's ideas can be based on simple models, speculation, things from media, some of this information can be biased, and it's important to know that biased basically means that something that is being said is based on a subjective opinion, not necessarily on fact. We'll come into looking more at these issues as we go through the next couple of lessons. So, I've gone through quite a bit there. So can you just pause the video now and have a look at knowledge and application questions to finish. Have a go at them, review the content from the last couple of lessons, see how many you can answer, then unpause the video and we will just fill out the answers to finish off. Right, so hopefully you've unpaused the video because you've had a good crack at those questions. So let's go through them nice and quickly. 2 processes that increase the levels of carbon dioxide. Combustion, especially fossil fuels, and deforestation. 2 processes that increase levels of methane. Animal farming and landfill. So we've talked about carbon dioxide, we've talked about methane. What's the third big greenhouse gas? Water vapour. People in the same field or same area of expertise in science are called peers. Predict what will happen to surface temperature over the next 50 years. Would expect it to increase. How do climate models predict the future? They produce estimates based on sea, land, and atmosphere interactions. Name 3 areas measured in making climate models. So it takes data from the past and present in order to try and predict the future. How has surface temperature increased over the last 200 years? Again, it's increased. Then, last couple of questions. Suggest the effect on the real facts and figures when newspapers and TV media dumb down science to make it easier for the public to understand. So one of the things is they only present partial evidence, which means that conclusions can be at the risk of being biased. Explain why the media could be selective in which parts of the data they choose to publish. And they may only choose certain parts of data to publish because they want to reach a predetermined conclusion. Good. So if you want to pause the video and make sure you've marked any of your answers there, corrected any of your answers, and if you've done that, then we've finished our lesson 2 tutorial for chemistry of the atmosphere. Thank you for watching.